Hi everyone, welcome. So today we're going to be reviewing for ATI TEAS, and we're going to be doing 30 practice problems that are specific to anatomy and physiology. So before we get into it, I just want to give you a brief overview on how I developed these questions, just so you can have a bit of legitimacy onto what you're getting into here. So first of all, I went onto the official ATI TEAS website and I purchased one of their bundles. If you haven't been there before, they have different bundles where you can buy some practice exams from there, which have hundreds of practice problems. That being said, I studied all of the questions thoroughly. There were hundreds of questions in the 3 practice exams that they gave me. The subjects were biology, chemistry, anatomy, physiology, English, writing, math. They had all the subjects there. What I noticed is that they have a few very high yield topics and high yield subjects within those topics that they repeat the question a lot. They just reword it, but they repeat it, which means that it's something that you must know for the TEAS exam. You must study them. So what I did is I learned these topics, I reviewed it even further, and I developed these questions based off of those topics. I'm really hoping that this video helps you out studying for your TEAS exam, and if you like it, if you learned something new, please give me a like, follow, or subscribe. This really helps support me. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Which of the following structures are the site of gas exchange? A, the lungs, B, the bronchioles, C, the alveoli, and D, thoracic cavity. So first I want to point out that I know that it looks like multiple of these answers could be correct, but this is one of those questions where you have to choose which is the most correct. And you're going to see this a lot in nursing, right? You're going to see multiple answers that it looks like it could be a lot of them, but you have to choose which is the most correct. And one way to deal with something like this is you look at keywords in the question. For me, the keyword is site. The site of gas exchange. So the site of gas exchange is very, very, very specific. The lungs in the thoracic cavity, that we know that, yeah, there's gas exchange there, but that's not specific enough. So the answer is going to be C, alveoli, because that is the most specific spot that there is gas exchange. What is one of the major functions of bile? A, bile breaks down fat and aids in fat absorption in the small intestines. B, it helps absorb oxygen in the lungs. C, lines the intestinal walls. Or D, breaks down fats and absorbs nutrients in the stomach. The answer here is A. Bile breaks down fats and aids in fat absorption in the small intestines. So a few other facts about bile is that it's produced in the liver, and bile is stored in the gallbladder until it's needed for fat digestion. So here I have a picture of gallbladder and liver. You can see how close they are in proximity. So basically, if you ever have problems with your bile, chances are you're going to have problems with your liver or your pancreas or your gallbladder, and vice versa. If you ever have problems with your gallbladder or liver, chances are you might have problems with your bile. Which of the following tissues attach bone to bone? A, ligaments, B, tendons, C, muscle, or D, fat? So most people get ligaments and tendons confused. The answer here is A, ligaments. Ligaments attach bone to another bone, and tendons actually attach muscle to bone. Question number 6. What is the function of surfactant in the lungs? A, it reduces the tension of the fluids in the alveoli and prevents the alveoli from collapsing. B, keeps terminal branches smooth and moist. C, produced by alveoli cells. Or D, moistens the trachea. So the answer here is A. The function of surfactant is actually to reduce the tension of the fluids that surround the alveoli. And this in turn basically keeps the alveoli from collapsing. Basically, there's surface tension on the alveoli from the fluids that are accumulated there, and the surfactant just counteracts this. Also, C is very true. The surfactant is produced by the alveoli cells, but again, this is the key word here is function. What is the function of the surfactant? And A answers that. Question number 7. Which of the following is associated with wound healing by primary intention? A. Increased bleeding and tissue scarring. B. Blood clotting and heavy bleeding on the wound site. C. Wound edges are closely reapproximated and there is minimal scar tissue. D. A large gap is left between the edges of the wound for natural healing to occur. The answer here is C. Wound edges are closely reapproximated and there's minimal scar tissue. That is because healing by primary intention creates very little tissue loss, therefore there is very little scar tissue. And with primary intention, remember that the wound edges are always very close. You're never going to have a large gap or something, like a big ulcer inside of the wound. It's always very small, and the bleeding is actually minimal. Which of the following are types of macrophages? A. Kupffer cells and dust cells. B. Red blood cells and white blood cells. C. Mast cells and epithelial cells. Or D. Interferon cells. The answer here is A. Kupffer cells and dust cells. So macrophages means big eater, and they're actually large white blood cells. Some of these macrophages are fixed in specific tissue, and those macrophages are given specific names. For example, Kupffer cells are found in the lining of the liver, and dust cells are found in the lining of the lungs. Which of the following recognize body cells with abnormal membranes, such as tumors, and destroy them? A. Natural killer cells. B. Mast cells. C. Histamines. Or D. Regulatory T cells. The answer here is A. Natural killer cells. As the name indicates, they are able to recognize any abnormalities in our body cells, such as tumors or cells infected with viruses, and they are able to kill them on contact. Natural killer cells are found in lymph nodes, spleen, bone marrow, and the blood. They destroy abnormal cells by screening a protein that breaks down the plasma membrane, but the way in which they find their target is not yet completely understood. Increased blood flow causes the following: A. Vasoconstriction, bleeding, swelling, and redness. B. Heat, redness, and swelling. C. Heat, redness, swelling, and vasodilation. Or D. Coolness, swelling, and itching. The answer here is C. Heat, redness, swelling, and vasodilation. You can see that B also has much of the same answer, except it's missing vasodilation. So this is one of those questions that it's asking you to pick the most correct answer, and the most correct would include vasodilation. The following is true when you have a fever. A fever is a sign that your defense system is active. A fever stimulates phagocytes, increases metabolism, and decreases certain disease organisms' ability to multiply. B. A fever causes vasoconstriction and decreases blood flow. C. Fever activates your immune system and decreases blood flow through the body. Or D. Fever is always dangerous and is unnecessary when fighting infections. The answer here is A. A fever is a sign that your defense system is active. A fever stimulates phagocytes, increases metabolism, and decreases certain disease organisms' ability to multiply. Now, the answer D, fever is always dangerous and is unnecessary when fighting infections. A lot of people think that fever is always dangerous, and that's why we always give medication to reduce fever. However, fever actually helps in activating immune system so that we get better faster. The only time that it's dangerous is when the fever gets way out of control and becomes way too high, or you're having fever for way too long. So again, guys, the answer here is A. Which enzyme is produced by the kidneys and activates angiotensin in order to increase blood pressure? A. Aldosterone, B. Antidiuretic hormone, C. Renin, or D. The glomerular capsule. The answer here is C. Renin. So renin is an enzyme that is produced by the kidneys. It plays a huge role in regulating fluid volume and blood pressure. Receptors in the kidneys respond to low sodium, which usually means low volume of blood, and these receptors trigger a release of renin. Renin then initiates the process that activates angiotensin, which is the protein that increases blood pressure by multiple mechanisms. Which of the following parts of the nervous system is responsible for controlling respiratory rate? A. The cerebellum, B. The medulla oblongata, C. Pons, or D. The midbrain. So before I answer this, I just want to let you know that this is a super high yield question. I've seen multiple questions like this, like which of the following parts of the nervous system is responsible for blank, or they ask you questions related to the cerebellum, the pons, midbrain, and medulla oblongata. So make sure you know what is under involuntary control, voluntary control, and yeah. So with that being said, the answer here is B, medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata controls autonomic activities such as respiratory rate and the heart rate. Which of the following is a structure that filters foreign particles from lymphatic fluid? A. Lymph nodes, B. Lymphatic capillaries, C. Chyle, or 3. Thoracic duct. The answer here is A. Lymph nodes. Remember that your lymphatic system is part of your immune system. It helps protect you from infections, but it also helps balance fluid in your body and absorb excess fats in your body. And the nodes are somewhat like your kidneys in the way that they filter out foreign particles that just don't belong in your body. Which of the following muscle types is under voluntary control? A. Smooth muscle, B. Cardiac muscle, C. Skeletal muscle, or D. Muscles of the abdominal wall. So remember that voluntary muscles are those that you can control consciously, and involuntary are those that happen passively, whether you'd like them to happen or not. You have no control over them. So the answer here is C, skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is under voluntary control. We control it when we walk, when we carry something, when we jump. Involuntary control would be smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and muscles of the abdominal wall are also involuntary. Which of the following hormones are produced by the thyroid gland? A. Thyroxin T4, triiodothyronin T3, and calcitonin. B. Only thyroxin, C. Only calcitonin, or D. Only T4 and T3. The answer here is A. All 3 of these hormones are produced by the thyroid. Which structure prevents food from being aspirated into the lungs? A. The epiglottis, B. The larynx, C. The esophagus, or D. The trachea. The answer here is A. Epiglottis. The epiglottis is a little flap that prevents food from entering your lungs. Where are your carpal bones located? A. Your hands, B. Your feet, C. Your skull, or D. Your wrist. The answer here is D, your wrist. Your carpal bones actually are 8 small bones that are in 2 rows that make up your wrist. And don't get these confused with your metacarpals. There are 5 small bones that make up the palm of your hand, and these are called your metacarpals. Now, I know you're probably wondering, should I memorize all of the small bones that make up your metacarpals and carpals? In my opinion, as far as the TEAS goes, I don't think it gets as intricate as that, but that's just my opinion. However, if you're going into a nursing program and you have the time right now, might as well try and memorize these bones as much as you can, because you're definitely going to get quizzed on them when you're in nursing school. What is the role of myelin in the nervous system? A, to receive information from the body. B, to relay information to the brain. C, to slow down nerve impulses. Or D, to insulate and protect nerve fibers. The answer here is D, to insulate and to protect nerve fibers. Alrighty guys, question number 20. Sorry for the grammatical error here. The sympathetic system is responsible for pupil dilation, stimulating sweat glands, increasing heart rate, as well as the following. A, decreasing muscle contraction in the digestive system and decreasing kidney activity. B, vasodilation. C, inhibiting digestive glands and increasing digestive muscle contraction. Or D, increasing kidney and bladder function. The answer here is A. The sympathetic nervous system actually, when activated, it decreases muscle contraction in the digestive system and in the kidneys. And the reason why is because it preserves its muscle contractions for things that are more important for that fight type of activity. So it's actually doing things that might help you fight, like pupil dilation, stimulating your sweat glands, your heart rate. But secondary things like digestion and like elimination of waste aren't that important to your sympathetic system. So they're going to put those things on hold. Alrighty guys, question 21. Which gland controls the pituitary gland by means of nerve impulse and secretions? A, the hypothalamus. B, the pineal gland. C, oxytocin. Or D, the adrenal gland. The answer here is A. The hypothalamus is actually what controls and stimulates the pituitary gland. Also, on the side note, the pineal gland, oxytocin, and adrenal gland, these are all super important to know as well. That's why I added them, included them into the answers right here. Alrighty guys, question number 22. Which of the following initiates the heartbeat? A, the right atrium, B, the ventricles, C, the SA node, or D, the AV node? The answer here is C, the SA node, which is also known as the heart's pacemaker. This is what initiates the impulses for the atrium to start contracting, which means it starts the heartbeat. If a person is hyperventilating, what might be distinct in their lab findings? A, a low pH level, B, a low oxygen level, C, acidosis, or D, alkalosis? So the answer here is D, alkalosis. If a person is hyperventilating, their oxygen levels are actually going to increase, their carbon dioxide levels are going to decrease in their blood, which makes their pH levels increase, and this causes an excess alkalinity in the body, and this is referred to alkalosis. Now, the opposite happens if somebody is hypoventilating. their CO2s are going to rise, their oxygen levels are going to go down, and their pH levels are also going to go down. This causes a acidity in the body, and this is referred to as acidosis. So again, the answer to this question is D, alkalosis. What is stroke volume referring to? A, the number of heartbeats in a minute. B, the amount of blood that enters the atrium in a minute. C, the volume of blood ejected from the ventricles with each heartbeat. Or D, the amount of blood that pulls in the left ventricle in 1 minute. The answer here is C, the volume of blood ejected from the ventricles with each heartbeat. So the sympathetic nervous system can simulate more forceful heart contractions to increase this blood ejection or increase the stroke volume. Also, if more blood returns to the heart in the venous system, the increased blood volume stretches the heart muscle and promotes more forceful contractions. So this is so that we get sufficient amount of blood in our body. So for example, if we're working out, then our stroke volume might increase because we're going to need more blood pumping through our body. Rather than when we're resting, our stroke volume is probably a lot less because we don't need as much blood pumping throughout our body. Number 25. The following is a muscle in the shape of a ring that regulates the size of an opening. A, the sphincter, B, valve, C, the pericardium, or D, hiatus. Your answer here is sphincter, A. So your sphincter muscles you can find all over your body. You can find them in your gastrointestinal system, like your lower esophageal sphincter, your pyloric sphincter. You have an anal sphincter, a urethral sphincter that opens and closes a part of your bladder. Anything that requires something to regulate an opening so that things don't spill out is basically going to have a sphincter. And this is definitely a super high yield question. I don't know why, but even in nursing school, they want to know that you know where your sphincter muscles are. Which of the following hormones promotes water reabsorption in the kidneys? A, renin, B, antidiuretic hormone, C, aldosterone, or both aldosterone and antidiuretic hormone? So your answer here is D. Both aldosterone and the antidiuretic hormone actually promote water reabsorption or retention in order to increase your volume in your blood and increase your blood pressure. Which of the following is the site for sperm maturation in a male? A, the prostate glands, B, the vas deferens, C, the epididymis, or D, the seminal vesicles? The answer here is C, the epididymis. Alrighty guys, number 28. When leaving the left ventricle, which of the following structures does the blood enter next? A, the pulmonary veins, B, the pulmonary valve, C, the aorta, or D, the left atrium? The answer here is C, it enters your aorta. Number 29. Which of the following is the correct order of the meningeal layers of the brain from inside out? So starting from the inside, going outwards. A, the arachnoid, dura mater, and then the pia mater. B, pia mater, arachnoid, and then the dura mater. C, starting with pia mater, then dura mater and arachnoid. D, starting with dura mater on the inside, pia mater, and then arachnoid on the outside. So the correct answer here is B. The correct order, pia mater is your innermost, your arachnoid is in the middle, and your dura mater is the outermost layer. Alrighty guys, last question here. Which of the following is the iron containing component in a red blood cell? A, albumin, B, erythropoietin, C, cerumen, or D, hemoglobin? The answer here is D, hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is what carries your iron in your red blood cell. Alrighty everyone, that's the end of this session. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. Please give me some comments on any feedback you might have to improve these sessions. I will be uploading more. Other than that, until next time.